Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition. I went down a rabbit hole this week. For those of you that are not on the YouTube channel, you can see that I am enjoying a really nice cappuccino. And I got the idea of this topic this morning. I often meet with my editor every Saturday just to go over what's happening and ideas, column ideas, podcast ideas, any articles, books that we're working on, etc. And I got talking about some of my recent challenges with a certain maker of espresso machines, and finally the new one that I've gotten. And where my head often goes is I started doing the math because I now that I make such good cappuccinos at home, I am consuming upwards to 6 a day. Now, those are not caffeinated. I've also gone down rabbit holes finding the best decaf that there is with no loss of flavor and no additional chemicals. And I found that, so I would say 5 of those cappuccinos are decaf, and maybe the first one in the morning is caffeinated. And I just started doing the numbers. You know, when I travel, the cappuccino that I order would be an extra shot, decaf, medium, cappuccino with oat milk. And I've really grown quite accustomed to oat milk. And that's about $10 at the airport, in downtown in a large city, with tax, and that may or may not be with a tip, about $10. Now in my hometown, I can get that cappuccino for $5.50. Quite a difference. So I just started doing the numbers, and it's an absurd amount of savings having my own cappuccino machine. And so I cut this down to, what if I consume just 3 cappuccinos a day? And let's compare the cost of that with a Breville Barista Touch espresso machine, which I'm really enjoying. It makes fantastic milk, and the total cost is about $1,060, including tax. So I figured that I use, now for those of you that are like, oh my God, is he just going to go on about numbers? I will get to the emotions, I promise you. But let's do the financial part. So I use about 4 ounces of oat milk per cappuccino. They're a 32-ounce container. Costs around $5.50, depends if it's on sale or not. That's about 70 cents per serving for cappuccino. Now I know that a lot of cafes charge between $1 and $1.25 for oat milk, which I don't think is that ridiculous when you look at the cost of it. Coffee beans, a 12-ounce bag, which coffee tends to come in these days. Let's just say it's nice coffee, $15. You can get it, of course, for less. You can even pay more. Let's go a little high at $15, 20 servings per bag, which means each cup of coffee costs 75 cents. So we got oat milk at 70. We got the coffee at 75. That's $1.45. Let's just round that up to $1.50 for the cost of water, washing the dishes, anything else. So if I'm doing that 3 cappuccinos a day, is $4.50 a day hard cost. 7 days a week is $31.50 a week is my cost. And then let's assume that for 2 months of the year, about 8 weeks, that I am traveling, that I am just not making coffee at home. Maybe I'm going out to a cafe occasionally. So my actual cost is $1,386 a year for my home habit. Now, contrast that cost of $1,386 a year to if I go out, I pay $5.50 per cappuccino, 3 a day, $16.50 a day, $115.50 a week, just over $5,000 a year for 44 weeks. That's just about $5,000 a year. So cafes, $5,000 a year. At home is $1,386. Call it $1,400 a year. So my savings is about $3,700 a year. The machine costs $1,060. Well, I break even on the machine in 15 weeks. So let's carry it a little further. I did a little research on how long do Breville touch machines last. The average semi-automatic cappuccino maker lasts 5 to 10 years. Breville's a little better than average quality. They said 7 to 10 years. Let's just use 5. Let's just assume it lasts 5 years. So that means the total savings is $18,500. Not bad. Take off the cost of the machine at $1,060. The savings is net of the machines around $17,500 in a year. Now, what's the rate of return? I'll save you all the maturations, but the cumulative return is 1,645%, which is 329% a year. This is a little bit better than my financial planning firm can return to anybody. Now, you might say, well, let's just invest everything into coffee. No, it doesn't quite work that way. This is the personal return. But 329% a year? Phenomenal. So let's not be so crazy. Let's assume that you're more normal and you're not going to do 3 cappuccinos a day or 6 as the truth is that I drink. You're going to do one a day. And I've done the same calculation for clients. And let's assume you love oat milk. If you like regular milk, it's only 11 cents a cup, right? Instead of 70 cents. Let's go on the oat milk cost. And the coffee 75 cents, so it's still the same cost at home, $1.50, which means your cost over the 44 weeks at home is $462 a year, making cappuccino 1 a day at home. If you go to the cafe, 1 cappuccino a day, $38.50 a week. We're using the $5.50 cost, the Rapid City cost. That's a total cost of about $1,700 a year. So let's do the math. $1,700 minus about $500 cost at home is a savings of $1,200. Take off the machine of about $1,000, and you've got a $200 savings the first year. But if you look at it over 5 years, you're going to save $6,160 total. Take the machine off of $1,060. Your total savings over 5 years is $5,100. That's the return for the 1 a day plan. Now that's a 481% cumulative return, which your annual return is 96.2% a year. 92.6% a year on 1 cappuccino a day, 10 months out of the year. All right. That is rather compelling, especially to those of you that are money vigilant. I mean, that is like irresistible. Um, so what are other benefits? Well, you've got the convenience. You can have it right now. I would not be drinking 6 cappuccinos today if I would have to be making a trip to Starbucks or my favorite local cafe. Um, it wouldn't be happening. Now, maybe it would happen if my office was next to the coffee shop, but it's very convenient. And I really have complete control over the process, so I can adjust the strength of the coffee. I can change the milk, the amount of foam. I can experiment, which I do with different beans. It gives me a lot of flexibility. And sometimes folks get there's the satisfaction of making your own cappuccino. Now, the Breville Touch makes it really easy, quite frankly. And if you make the coffee at home, there are some environmental benefits. So those are the benefits, but there are some negatives. You've got to have $1,060 to buy a machine with, which, interestingly enough, we know that 48% of Americans would have to sell or borrow to come up with $1,000. And you might say, well, wait a minute, if you're spending $550 a day, you've got the money. Well, you don't necessarily have the money right now up front to buy that, because if you are the typical American, you're spending everything that you make every month. So you have no savings. So this may not be as simple as it sounds for a lot of people. So that is a negative. You've got to maintain and clean the machine. This doesn't take a long time. It's not very expensive, but it still is something that you have to do. It takes a little bit of skill, not a lot, but a little bit of skill to learn how to make the espresso. And just as customizing can be an advantage, you can get a lack of variety. Like if you just want to make different options, that a frappuccino, all the different coffee drinks that you can get. If you're not into a routine and a rut like I am and get the same thing every time, that can be a negative. And I think a really important negative is the social experience. For a lot of people, going to the coffee shop is more than about the coffee. It's about a chance for connection, a chance to socialize and take a break from work. I work from my home mostly, so I'm consuming my coffee basically at home. And this is a big deal, and one reason why I think it's makes sense to not assume 12 months of coffee consumption. I assume 10. You could break it down. You could go half the year. Over 5 years, you're still going to come out on top. So the question is this worth it? Well, financially, it's a no-brainer, right? Coffee shops wouldn't exist if we were making logical financial decisions around our coffee consumption. I'm going to guess that coffee shops are not going to go out of business. From logic like this, and I've written a column that puts this all together, only in much fewer words. So let's take a look at why. Why will coffee shops stay in business? Why will most consumers not adapt or apply this very logical savings? The first would be what is called a status quo basis or bias. Sorry, it's not a basis, it's a bias. And status quo bias leads folks to prefer their current habits and routines even when a better alternative is available. So someone can continue to buy coffee at a cafe because it's what they've always done. It is their attachment to the ritual. It's the familiarity of that run. It's almost like smoking, that I'm told, is that whole experience is reaching into the pocket, taking out the cigarette, feeling the texture of the cigarette with your hands, maybe rolling it if a person rolls it. It's a whole experience and ritual, and it feels really comfortable. And interrupting that routine can be very difficult, very difficult. And I'm thinking of myself. I used to meditate when I got to the office. First thing I did is I took a hard left, went in the conference room, and did my 20 minutes of meditation every day without fail. The pandemic hit, and reestablishing that routine at home was incredibly difficult, to the point that I really had to do some real introspection on what is going on. But I have a part of me that loves my routine and does not want to be to deviate, to be upset from that routine. So I do not want to minimize the status quo bias or an emotional attachment to rituals. So this in itself can stop buying a coffee machine and earning 96% a year returns. Another one can be like the instant gratification. It's called hyperbolic discounting, to be exact. And for example, buying a cappuccino from a café provides like immediate satisfaction. You get that right now. Whereas the benefits of making the coffee at home, especially when you've just laid down $1,060, are going to accumulate over time. There is no upfront investment when you walk into the coffee shop. So that can be a little daunting to lay down that much money all at once up front, because it's going to take a while to recoup the return on that. So the money script might be, why invest in an espresso machine today when I could just buy a coffee in 5 minutes? So that's a real block to executing on this wonderful financial return. Another one would be a fear of inadequacy, which could be driven from perfectionism. And that would be a fear of not doing something perfectly, which is making your cappuccino, your flat white, your specialty coffee, your latte at home. And the fear can be, and I get this one, because the fear was true for me for quite a while. It just wasn't the same. I just couldn't replicate the quality of that professionally made cappuccino. So you could even buy your machine and try it for a little while and go, this is the stupidest thing I ever did. This is terrible coffee. Now, part of that can be buying the right machine. I struggled with 2 years with a DeLonghi machine, of which previously I had owned them and been satisfied with them. But a long story. It took me, I struggled for 2 years and I finally gave up. And when I bought the Breville, which is really about the same price, it was amazing. It was night and day in the type of quality that it provided. And for me, the key was searching for a machine that did great cappuccinos, and the DeLonghi was not amongst them. There were 3 brands, and the Breville was one. So, but anyway, the fear of inadequacy or perfectionism with the coffee is also real, and it can be very legitimate if you don't have the right machine. Some money scripts that get in the way. One would be, I deserve this. Now, a money script is an unconscious belief about money that drives our financial behaviors 24/7. And the I deserve this money script suggests that a part of us can justify indulgent purchases as a reward for hard work or to boost a mood. It can lead us to spend money on daily cappuccinos as a way of treating ourselves because we deserve this luxury. We work hard for this luxury. And this is a big one. This is really a big one. I see this all the time in, you name it, even when it comes to dieting. I've been good all day. I've been good all week. I deserve it. Sometimes the I deserve it money script can just really blow any progress. And in this case, of course, it can, you could end up buying the machine and then hardly ever making a cappuccino at home because you're passing by the Starbucks and that desire kicks in, the I deserve it right now. Let me stop. It's been a few days since I had one. I'll go buy one. And then it's possible we can fall back into that routine. So that's a big one. The I deserve it money script is a big one. Anchoring can sneak in here. We've talked about the anchoring bias a lot, and that's the tendency to rely heavily on the first piece of information that we encounter when making a decision. And it's usually the first number. That's the anchor. So it can affect our coffee buying habits that we're used to seeing the $550 for a cappuccino, and now we look at the machine for $1,060, and we can just shut down. Like, you got to be kidding me! $1,060 for a machine. The cappuccino is just $550, and I know this is going to come as a shock to you, but a lot of people's brains don't work like mine. They don't dissect numbers. I think, that's one reason that I became a financial planner. I'm a money vigilant. It's how my brain works. I used to think there was something wrong with people that brains didn't do numbers. And I apologize to every person I've ever had that thought about. It hasn't been for a couple decades I've had that. But eventually I realized, no, I'm the odd one out. My brain is not normal. And I'd say about 30% of society's brains aren't normal because they kind of work like mine, and that's not normal. So it's really easy for us to anchor and then lose the focus, the big picture on what's really going on. Another one is just loss aversion. That's where the pain of losing is felt more strongly than gaining. Again, this can be a reason that a person says, I don't want to spend $1,060 on an espresso machine, even though it's going to save me money in the future. It's really hard. A person has to make a real effort to sit down and do what I did at the beginning of this podcast and go through and parse all the numbers. Again, because of the ritual, because of my money avoidance, if I'm money avoidant, I just don't want to think that hard. Some other biases, we talked about the social aspect of this. You could say that's the herd mentality. If your friends and colleagues frequently go to the coffee shop, there can be pressure to do the same. There can be quite a social aspect of going to a cafe. It can even be a social aspect. For example, during the pandemic, I started writing a lot of my columns at a cafe in Rapid City on Sunday. I'd go down and I would have a couple cappuccinos and I'd write my column. And I was not there to consume the coffee. I was there because there's an energy with the coffee shop. The noise in the background doesn't bother me. Actually, it somehow can motivate me or feel comfortable. But nevertheless, I was still spending $10, $12 a Sunday to go write at the coffee shop. And this might sound weird. I said during COVID. It was the only time I got out, and this was a coffee shop with a ton of space. They have a second story, and I could feel comfortable that I wasn't side by side with people. Now today, I do that. I still write on Sunday, but I'm writing in my kitchen, still with the same 2 cups of coffee. In the background, I might have the talking heads on or some news running, which is kind of the same thing of the coffee shop. So these are just some things that come up for me over this, and I give these to you. You may spend some time thinking, how can you overcome these blocks? You could visualize the long-term return, the 5-year return on this. That could be emotionally motivating. You could begin tracking your spending on coffee just to bring this to your awareness. Maybe a part of you is going, come on, we don't spend that much. You don't need to think in all or nothing, that you're never going back to a coffee shop. Like I said, you could do the numbers on implementing 50% of your coffee buying at home, and it's still going to be a great return. And you can look at spending the money on the machine as a long-term investment. So I hope that this has been of interest to you, and I had fun going down the rabbit hole on this. Spent far too much time, but it was fun. Feel free to reach out to me at rick@rickkahler.com with any comments, questions that you have. I do a talking financial therapy session once a month. It's usually the last Friday of the month at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Just Google Talking Financial Therapy with Rick Kahler, and you'll find it. And I do appreciate your listening and your support, and I look forward to talking with you next week. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.